Welcome everyone. My name is Tamara Ownsworth. I'm the Research Director at the Hopkins Centre, and it's my pleasure to be co-facilitating the Hopkins information session to discuss upcoming funding opportunities. Before we get underway though, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thanks, Makala. Multitasking like a champion there, Makala. Thank you. And next round, thank you. So I'm Tamara, and it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleague Jessie Mitchell, who will be known to many of you. So Jessie and I are sharing the facilitation of today's event. And people may not be aware, but Jessie has recently moved into a new position at the Hopkins Centre, where she is the Clinician Research Capacity Building Research Fellow, which means that she works closely with people to develop ideas for research and supports them, which is incredibly relevant to today's information session. Jessie will tell you a little bit more when she takes over from me, but also just to mention some other people who are pictured. So we have Tim Garrity, Louise Gustafsson and the wonderful Makala Kerr. All five of us have a lot to do with the C grant and the clinical fellowships, and I'll explain our different roles throughout today. So what we're going to cover today is a new opportunity that's now open, and that's the C grant, Hopkins C grants, as well as the clinical fellowships and the two different types of fellowship opportunities. And then we'll finish with a Q&A. I will, however, give people a chance to ask questions after the C grant section in case you have some burning questions at that point. And if people would like to ask a question when I invite these, if you could just raise your hand or pop it in the chat, that would be great. Thanks, Makala. So just by way of context, as people would know, the Hopkins Centre has a very strong focus on research relevant to disability and rehabilitation. And what we really aim to do is to bring people together from different disciplines and fields and involve people with lived experience, clinicians, policymakers and researchers to focus on priority areas of practice where there is a challenge or an issue that's impacting the lives of people with disability, and the goal is really to develop practical solutions and knowledge gain that will address these issues. So there's a strong emphasis on collaboration. We also really like it when our research can build clinical and research capacity, so engage early career researchers, which can be clinicians or academic researchers or citizen researchers. Our work also has a strong translational focus, so we like to be responsive to issues that are emerging in clinical practice to be able to then embed solutions in practice. Our populations of focus at the Hopkins Centre is broadly people with disability, but for the funding opportunities I'm talking about today, these really relate specifically to adults with acquired neurological disorders, so both acquired brain injury and spinal cord injury, and also musculoskeletal and persistent pain conditions. Thanks, Makala. So very excited to announce round 9 of the C grant. So these have been running for many years now. And these are obviously grants or projects that would start in early 2026. So the aim is to support interdisciplinary research projects that ultimately will improve disability and rehabilitation practice, service delivery and systems. As mentioned, there's a strong capacity building element, so we like to support early career researchers to lead and establish programs of research. The C grants, as the name suggests, often do focus on startup research or pilot work, where there might be a focus on co-designing new products or resources and potentially piloting the feasibility and acceptability of those. But there's also a focus on the translation of that research into practice, and can also follow on from a previous project, so it represents a new phase of research. The teams are really important to consider when planning a C grant. So because of that interdisciplinary collaboration that we're really trying to encourage, it's important that teams have at least one member from the clinical service, such as the Department of Rehabilitation, Metro South Health, or specifically the Department of Rehabilitation, and also one academic researcher from Griffith University. So that can be an AI or a CI role. It's also important that teams look to find ways to support the development of early career researchers and people with lived experience that are aiming to become involved in research, and more generally that there is the right mix of clinical research and industry partners involved, because that combination is so important to translation and also perhaps moving the research to the next step, which could be leveraging another funding opportunity. Thanks, Makala. So the seed grants have traditionally and will continue to be worth the amount of $20,000 to $40,000, and the budget for these can go towards a number of different items, but particularly we're looking to fund direct research costs. So the costs of research assistance, it could be clinical buyout for a clinician who's wanting to get involved in data collection and other elements of the project. Consumables, a really common one here is remuneration for participants and AI investigators with lived experience, and also other justifiable field work costs, which could be transcribing, purchasing questionnaires and so forth. The budget can also extend to supporting knowledge translation. So we really like it when seed grant holders are able to go to conferences and disseminate their findings, and that can then be included in the budget. Importantly though, seed grants must not currently or have previously been funded by another source. So the same project can't have existing or previous funding. So seed grants aren't a way of just topping up the funding for a project that already has funding in place. We have learned over the years that it is incredibly difficult to complete a seed grant through to fruition in 12 months. So we have decided this year, and probably for following rounds, that we are increasing the length of time to 17 months. So that 17 months must include the period required for ethics and governance. So it's effectively 5 extra months, and that's what we have learnt is really necessary, particularly if you're seeking hospital ethical clearance. So the ethics, governance and contracting is feasible to complete within 4 to 5 months. And that's why we've now got this new time frame. So CIAs can seek approval to vary the time frame for a project, but we must have the main outcomes known and funds spent within that 17 months, because that also aligns with the Hopkins funding period too. So the CIA is a very important role on these projects. So to be eligible to be CIA, you must be a member of the Hopkins Centre and have a substantive position within the Department of Rehabilitation. And that obviously extends through to PA and Logan researchers, or Griffith University. So all CIs must be Hopkins members or otherwise can be AIs. So you're certainly welcome to involve researchers based at other universities. Just be aware that that can increase the time required for the contract and governance process. Thanks, Makala. So here's an overview of the timeline. We've passed some of these dates already. So we announced the seed grants, I think it was in June, and then we officially opened the EOI on the 1st of July. Today's the information session. So the key date of focus now is August 11th, and that's when the application for the expression of interest is due at the Hopkins Centre. We aim to have a fairly fast turnaround of reviewing those EOIs, and we're aiming to get feedback to people by late August. And all applications will receive feedback regardless of whether or not they proceed to the full application round. And for those who do, that is the shortlisted applications, we're inviting full applications for submission by the 24th of September. There will then be a period throughout September and October where those applications will undergo a full panel review, and then the successful application announcement will occur in November. And then everyone will hit the ground running in January to commence their projects. Thanks, Makala. So the link at the top of this slide, which I think Makala will also pop into the chat for us, is really the gateway to find out everything you need to know about both the seed grants and the clinical fellowships. So it's a link to the Hopkins website, which can be a bit of a maze, I will admit. The Hopkins website can be tricky, so please do save this link. And what you'll find is that this webpage contains not only the guidelines for the funding opportunities we're talking about today, but also those EOI templates and application forms that will go straight through to a Google Doc that you can then download and save on your computer. So we will make sure that that link is available in the chat for people. Thanks, Mikala. Oh, and there it is. Thank you, Mikala. And so save that link if you're interested. So very important that C grants are aligned with the programs of research and the populations of priority here at the Hopkins Centre. So successful projects will have demonstrated how the proposed research will contribute to and value add our existing research activities within the two main programs. And I'm going to go through each program briefly to make sure people are familiar with the breadth and the agenda of both programs. At the same time, though, we will consider research that doesn't fall neatly within Program 1 or Program 2, particularly if we feel that it represents an exciting extension of the research that we do. So we'll consider projects that aim to substantively build on research, particularly research that's previously been funded by a C grant or a clinical fellowship. So we do like that programmatic research, but it must substantively build on and not have the same aims of a previous C grant or fellowship. We also look for innovation and, therefore, if projects fall outside of Program 1 and 2, but we believe that there is strong merit and relevance to rehabilitation and disability for our priority populations, then those applications will certainly be favourably, considered as well. Thanks, Mikala. So Program 1, the co-leaders are myself and Tim Geraghty. So this is on evidence-based practice and community intervention. And the four project areas that are outlined here are our main areas of research activity that are currently underway and will continue into 2026 and 2027. So firstly, we aim to improve rehabilitation systems, care transitions and trajectories of people of those populations outlined earlier, generally with acquired neurological conditions, musculoskeletal and pain conditions, with the aim of delivering equitable access to services and supports. There's also a strong focus on self-advocacy in this program, where we aim to support people's expression of choice and preference and their involvement in decisions about their care across the care continuum, with the goal of improving person-centred or personalised rehabilitation and supporting people's ability to navigate the complex systems, particularly that health and disability interface. We also have a strong focus on mental health and psychological wellbeing, particularly early identification and management of distress in order to reduce long-term health complications, but also we're interested in ways that we can enhance people's psychological wellbeing to restore sense of purpose and meaning. And then the fourth area is focused on employment and vocational participation, particularly ways of supporting sustainable employment through, for example, inclusive workplaces and reasonable accommodations. Thanks, Mikala. Program 2, the leader is Louise Gustafsson, and it's all about technology and environments for this program. So this program has 5 main research activities, and there's a strong focus on implementing technology into rehabilitation in a way that builds capacity and efficiency and improves outcomes. There's also a focus on the design of technology and co-design and assistive technology included there, with solutions building capability and usability. Also rehabilitation environment enrichment, so focusing on the physical and the social environment of rehabilitation to improve wellbeing and engagement in therapy. The fourth is driving. So we have quite a dedicated program focusing on improving the experience of the driving following brain injury pathway. And then finally, a broader focus on the environment in general, ways of increasing accessibility and inclusive environments, not just the home, but broader public spaces and neighbourhoods to enhance participation and community engagement. So I'm hoping that these topics are giving people some ideas of how their own interests and skills may align with the Hopkins programs. Next slide. So here is the list of the C grant recipients from the last round, which I think also gives people a bit of a sense of the type of projects that we fund. So I'll just give you a moment to read over those. So we have a C grant on pain management, decision making of people with spinal cord injury, sleep disturbances, surgical repair of pressure injury, personalising inpatient environment, navigating public transport, and design cafe and innovation. So we do look for, you know, a variety and diversity in terms of the populations of focus, but also, some of the research aims and questions. We've got a much bigger list of previous C grants that you can also ask to see if that would be helpful. Okay, so a really, really important step with the C grants is prior consultation before submitting the expression of interest. So you are welcome to approach any program leader directly. We strongly encourage that, but we also have Jessie in this really important role now, where Jessie is a great person that you can reach out to, and she may be able to visit your team and do some service level planning or some one-to-one meetings with clinicians to really support you with your idea development and planning. So I think that's really important to do early on. But then ultimately, every expression of interest that's submitted has to indicate consultation with the program leader. So there's a box on the form where you have to indicate that. And I just want to be clear that consultation isn't notification where you've notified a program leader that you're submitting an EOI. It's actually having a conversation with us, or one of us at least. So it could be asking for a Teams meeting to have a chat about some ideas, or submitting like a dot point outline of what you're aiming to turn into the EOI application and getting our feedback early. So we'll aim to be as responsive as we can to email requests for consultation and feedback on ideas. And it's such an important step that I think does have quite a strong bearing on the likelihood of success, because we can help you to align your research to our program and just give you useful tips on what could strengthen your application. So just to be clear that Tim, myself and Louise are not on the actual panel. So we more really are here to support you in developing your ideas and turning them into an application. We won't be ultimately judging the full applications that are submitted. And if your project, you're not sure where it fits, just reach out to at least one of us, because we understand the broader Hopkins agenda and we can connect you and link you to people. Thanks, Mikala. So this is what the EOI looks like in terms of the structure, and there's the link to that important email, that important website again. There is a bit of work involved in the EOI. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but early work invested in the EOI also means that there isn't as much work needed if it is converted to a full application. So we really like to see at the EOI stage that people have thought through their project really carefully. So it includes the CIA's CV, that indication that you have consulted with a program leader and who that was, title of the project, a lay summary, a one-page project proposal, which can be single-spaced, and it can be font as small as 10 to really give you the opportunity to outline what you're planning, brief sections on significance, impact and benefits, the research team, the involvement of service users, a brief indication of the project budget, not requiring justification at this stage, and ethics only if you happen to have ethical clearance. There isn't an expectation that you do. It's obviously wonderful if you do, because it speaks to the feasibility of the project, but we certainly understand that a lot of these projects are new and therefore there won't be ethical clearance in place yet. Thanks, Mikala. So this is just a bit of a visual representation of the process. So submission of the EOI by August 11th, and then the considerations for shortlisting. There's some essential ones that you want to make sure that your EOI demonstrates, including alignment with Hopkins priorities and objectives, that you've consulted with at least one program leader, enough information that we can tell if the project methodology is sound in principle, feasibility of your methodology, providing a timeline, indicating the team's capacity to undertake this research, and the budget, And we'll also be looking to see whether the project is addressing a novel research question to advance the field or state of science. And then we've got some indicators that would be more highly desirable, that would improve the competitiveness of your EOI, such as having the scope to build capacity of early career clinician and citizen researchers, engagement with industry and consumer groups to develop the concept of the project, and there being a clear link between your research aims and translation outcomes. So as mentioned, everyone will receive feedback on their EOI, including ones that don't proceed, in the hope that that obviously gives people some great knowledge and learning for future rounds. But then those that are proceeding to full application will have some fairly specific feedback about what we'd encourage that people address to strengthen their application at the full application stage. And that's due September 24th. So these are the criteria that the full applications will be judged by. I won't read through all of these, but you can kind of see where the weighting is. 50% to the first two criteria. Thanks, Michaela. So before we move on to the clinical fellow, in fact, that slide was meant to be my cue. Are there any questions that people have just about the Sea Grant opportunity before we lose ourselves in the world of clinical fellowships? So I'll just check the chat, but please feel free to pop your hand up. We're only a fairly small group, so be bold. Obviously, you're very welcome to contact any of us. I think that is the strong message of today. Please reach out. I think it makes for, a really helpful experience for people to have the chance to chat and share their ideas. We're all novice researchers, so there is no question that's too silly, I promise. And we can also link and connect you if you're not sure who might, be good on your team. Well, it looks like we don't have anyone just yet, Jessie, but there'll be an opportunity for Q&A at the end of Jessie's section. So we'll hand over now to Jessie, who's going to talk about the clinical fellowship opportunities. Thanks, Jessie.
Thanks so much, Tamara. So Hopkins is really excited to be able to offer clinical fellowship opportunities again. And so there's two types of clinical fellowships that are available currently. And so these are longer term clinical fellowships, and these run for 12 to 15 months, as well as shorter term Bright Sparks grants that run for 6 months. And the aim of both of these is really to support and facilitate clinician-led research, because we know how important it is that our clinicians are leading research that's relevant to their current practice, and really wanting just to support research capacity building within everyone's roles. And so these kind of programs of research activity and capacity building can be focused in a specialist field of knowledge and translation that has strategic relevance to the Hopkins Centre's kind of values and missions and populations of interest. So you'll notice just at the top, before I move to the next slide, that we have an open or rolling application process for each of these, but there are deadlines for when they'll stop being offered. So if we look at the clinical fellowships, just to give you the longer term clinical fellowships, the full applications must be approved by December 2025. And then for the 6-month Bright Sparks fellowships, they must be finalised by September 2026. And this is just because we need you to be able to finish within our own funding requirements, so that we can do our own reporting, and we want to be able to give you all of the resources and support that you need to finish your projects in a timely fashion. Thanks, Michaela. Can you shift to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so looking at the Bright Sparks grant, so these are those short-term 6 months research projects designed to build clinician research capacity. And so these are really targeted to be led by clinicians who are newer to research. And the value is up to $10,000, and often that will cover your backfill for your position while your clinical position while you're doing research activities. And so the idea is that you're having an introduction or a gateway to research. So you might be interested in doing further postgraduate research study, or you might be interested in leading more grants and developing your research capacity more generally. But it's not a requirement. So we like to hear about it, but you don't necessarily need to lay out your grand research plans right from the get-go. Thanks, Michaela. If you want to pop to the next one. So I think probably along with the grants, you're really needing to align with the Hopkins Centre program of research priorities and target populations. So those acquired neurological injuries in terms of brain and spinal cord injury, pain, and musculoskeletal. And we're looking for collaboration. So collaboration between you as a clinician leading the grant and, your team, whoever might be supporting you within it, but also finding an academic partner from the Hopkins Centre to help you and support you through that research process. I think probably the really clear things here are that they're 6-month project timeframes. And so we're really looking for projects that have existing ethical clearance or that don't require ethical clearance to commence. And that's just so that you can feasibly get it done within the 6-month period. So I'll chat to you a little bit about what these might look like in a second. But I think like the UC grants as well, we're looking for outputs that are academically relevant to Hopkins, but also really have positive impact on your clinical service. So that might look like a range of things that can improve service provision in your particular area. Thanks, Makala. So examples of projects that might feasibly fit into a 6-month period, so you're not chasing your tail the whole time. So it might be a project protocol for something larger, a scoping or systematic review, quality assurance projects where there's no ethics required. So that might look like a chart audit or a program or service evaluation. Of course, if you already have ethical clearance for something, then we can have a bit of a better discussion about that and you feel like it'll feasibly fit into 6 months. But we found that those not requiring ethics are the most successful. And I guess following on from that, you might have a publication or recommendations for service improvement, translation products. So along with your kind of academic support person from Hopkins, you'll also need confirmation of your departmental support from Metro South as well, or whoever you're operating under. And so I think, like I mentioned before, your application process is until September 2026. But I think just emphasizing what Tamara has already emphasized, re-emphasizing it, is that those early conversations are really important. And we find that people who have early conversations are the most successful because we're really here to help you develop your research capacity and ideas into something that will work for you in a clinically relevant way as well, help build your research skills and capacity. Thanks, Makala. So the initial application is 2 pages and you can kind of see what's involved here. So there's a bit of a project pitch that's a maximum of 500 words. And then we'll come back to you with more feedback and ask for a bit more of a developed proposal to get you to the point where you're ready to start that 6-month project. And so you can find this application form as well as the guidelines online with the link Tamara shared before. Thank you. So these are just some examples that we thought you might be interested in terms of previous Bright Spark grants. So I'll let you have a little read of those. And I think the one that Kristen has very kindly contributed to a Hopkins Hour in the last couple of weeks where she talked about her Bright Sparks project that's looking at the impact of waiting for the Metro South Pain Rehabilitation Centre on patients' use of high-risk moderated medicines. She did a clinical audit, and so this video is just her briefly chatting about what it meant for her and her team. Thanks, Makala.
Has this project been invaluable to my own development? It's also importantly contributed to our pain services developing research improvements as well. It's shown how clinical questions, when supported with the right tools, can drive a meaningful change. And I now feel more confident in designing and delivering clinical relevant research. I've become more comfortable working with routinely collected data, so recognising its both potential and its limitations, and using it in ways that are practical and meaningful. For the service, the project has helped strengthen our use of data to inform triage and risk highlighted areas for improvement. And it's opened up important discussions about how we can collect and use our information for further research. I'm hoping it's contributed to a growing culture of inquiry within our team, where we can have small-scale projects, audits, and quality initiatives feel more achievable. So advice to other clinicians, I feel like you don't need to have a PhD to start, which is something I thought in the past. Start small, start with a question within your clinical service. The Bright Sparks grant enabled me to explore that question right from within my service. Ask questions early, lean on your supports, mentors, other researchers, colleagues, and the Bright Sparks program made it all possible, so I encourage you to explore it.
So much better coming from Kristen than me. Perfect. So that kind of wraps up the overview of our Bright Sparks grants. And now moving on to our longer term clinical fellowships. So these are the 12 to 15 months in duration. And they're supporting that close integration of clinical practice that further develops service development and also the program of research within your service or within the literature more generally. And so the funding support for that 12 to 15 month period is up to $55,000. And so your eligible expenses will be direct research costs. So that might be a research assistant, buyout of your clinical time to do research, depending on how expensive you are, consumables, justified fieldwork costs, research training to help you upskill and gain specific research skills, as well as knowledge translation. And so like with all of the other grants we've chatted about, we're looking for applications that closely align with the missions and values of the Hopkins Centre and our priority populations. And I think just flagging again that the applications must be reviewed and finalised in 2025 so that you can get started in 2026 and be done in a timely fashion. I think probably just in terms of that funding support, something good to think about is that often we're expecting for people to have about 1 to 2 days per week available to work on their fellowship so that they can complete their projects. Perfect. Thanks so much, McCullough. So building on that, it's best to have those conversations early. And I think, I would expect that these clinical fellowships will be quite competitive this time around. And with that open application process, I think having those conversations early on to help you develop your ideas so that we know that you're interested and can help you align with what the Hopkins goals are as well is really valuable. And so you do need to consult with someone from Hopkins. So in the first instance, that might be myself, and then we can direct you to Tim, Tamara, or Louise, depending on where your work best aligns. So you do need to have a substantive clinical position within the Division of Rehabilitation at the PA or another Metro South Clinical Rehabilitation Service. So for example, the Logan Rehab Unit affiliated and one of the ones that's affiliated with Hopkins. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to us. And so that substantive clinical position needs to be a minimum of 0.5 FTE for a duration of the fellowship plus 6 months afterwards. And we just say that plus 6 months because we know that sometimes things run a little long or you need a little more translation time, and that just helps with that. Again, you'll need a clinical partner or support person from Hopkins, as well as approval from your department head or manager. Thanks, Michaela. So there's an EOI for the clinical fellowships as well before the full application, and you can submit them to Hopkins Centre at griffith.edu.au after you've consulted with the relevant program lead. And these are a little bit longer, understandably, than the Bright Spark. So you're looking at a couple of pages with a lay summary, context for your fellowship, and a one-page attachment proposal for your EOI. Thanks, McCullough. There's set selection criteria for the longer term clinical fellowships, and I'll let you just have a little bit of a read of those, but you can see that they're around the quality of the research project and the methodology, how it aligns with clinical practice, its novelty, and your resume and research experience relative to career stage. So please don't feel like that number 3 criteria means that you need to be a very experienced researcher when you're applying. It's more just demonstrating your experience or expertise in that particular clinical area and your enthusiasm to do more research, essentially. Perfect. Thanks, Makala. So there are some clinical fellowship examples here on the screen, and I'll let you have a little bit of a look. These have been over several years with Hopkins, and you can see that they're really ranging a broad range of topics and research methodologies and outcomes. There's a very practical singing chords therapeutic group, singing for people with spinal cord injury. And then we've got ones around optimizing processes for care and the management of people with spinal cord injury. And on my next slide, I have a short presentation from Emily Allen, who's doing one of our clinical fellowships currently. And she's just speaking about her experiences, and her project relates to developing data dashboard for clinical service delivery and spinal cord injury services. Thanks, Makala.
So overall, my advice, anyone wanting to consider a clinical fellowship, certainly it's been hard work, it's been challenging, but it's really been worth it. I've loved every minute of it. I would say try to shape your idea, if you've got one, into a research question. Start the conversation with Hopkins. They're very friendly and approachable. Talk to them about the different funding opportunities between seed grants and full fellowships. Take the plunge, dip your toe in the water with research. You won't regret it. You'll learn a lot. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn anything more about my experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just want to pop, perfect. So I think, as Emily highlighted, research is really rewarding, at times difficult and a bit of a journey, but I think what I hear Hopkins does really well compared to some of the other grant schemes that are available to you is that we really want to support our clinician researchers. And so we do offer a lot of support and one-on-one research capacity building for our successful applicants. And so you don't just get that one-on-one support from, whoever your academic partner is and our program leads, but you also get a university affiliation and access to the resources available to university staff members as well. So online training programs and the library and things like that. So if you are interested, I'm very happy for you to reach out to me and have a chat, even if it's just to say, actually, I do want to do more research, but I don't have an idea. Or if you've got an idea, but you're not quite sure what to do with it, or you're just thinking about it in the long term and you want to start having a conversation early, and then we can find you the best program lead for your project and how to best position it and link you up with them. And we'll help you to develop your idea so that it's ready to submit. Having said that, you might have a perfectly polished proposal ready to go, and we're very happy to hear about those as well and get you sorted so that you can submit your application. And if you're not really sure whether your project clearly aligns with one of our programs of research, but you're still interested and you feel like it might be right, please do reach out, because I think, we've got a really good understanding of what we're interested in as a centre, and there's often ways that we can have a think about what you're interested in that might align with our values and mission and priority populations. Or if not, we might be able to point you in the direction of a scheme that's better suited. So always happy to have a chat. And I think that's me done. And I think we're up for some Q&A. If anyone has any questions about now that you've heard about all of the funding opportunities, whether it's about the seed grants or any of the clinical fellowships, we'd be really happy to field some. We promise it's a safe space and there's no silly questions.